In the third year of suffering from prosopagnosia, I could only remember Gary's face. During an argument, he pushed me into the crowd, saying, "Be good, find me if you want to go home with me." Enduring the mockery, I finally found his face in the crowd. I pleaded softly, "I promise to behave, please don't leave me." He held me and praised me softly, "Irene, you did well." That night, as we walked out of the hotel hand in hand, I saw another Gary standing across the street, almost yelling, "Irene, get off my brother immediately." That's when I realized the man I was with last night was Gary's twin brother who had just returned from abroad. In the third year of prosopagnosia, Gary started to find amusement in involving me in his social circle, throwing me into the mix with his group of friends. He enjoyed seeing me panic when looking for him. "Gary, are you still playing at your brother's welcoming party tonight?" With the lights shining brightly, Gary brought me to another party. Many people were present, but the girl Gary brought with him was sitting next to him, flirting with him. She asked me, "I've never seen prosopagnosia, could you show me?" She thought I was being manipulated by Gary, not knowing who he really was because of my condition. That she was Gary's new lover, Lisa, a rising star in the entertainment industry whom Gary pampered. That night, she danced arrogantly in front of me, thinking Gary would favor her, but he coldly rejected her, saying, "You think you can impress me? Look, even Irene knows how to use tears to please me, why can't you? You're as dull as a block of wood." After 3 years of prosopagnosia, Gary was starting to lose patience with me. I timidly avoided his touch, fearing the upcoming game. "Gary, I'm not feeling well. Can we not play tonight?" His cold fingers grabbed my hair as he said, "No. I will be here, and you can only go home when you find me." As he pushed me into the crowd, the people joked, "Aren't you afraid Irene will run away?" Gary confidently replied, "Don't worry, she's brain damaged. She can't remember anyone except for my face." Before coming to the event, I had just argued with Gary because I mistakenly gave his food to someone else. He controlled his anger and said, "Irene, why can't you do such a simple task? Do you know how much mess I have to clean up because of you?" Gary's brother asked him, "Gary, doesn't she have cognitive impairments?" Gary chuckled and said, "Yes, she can't even recognize people, so dumb. But she was hurt because of me, I can't get angry with her." After arguing with him again, I faced the punishment of the night, as a bucket of ice-cold water was suddenly poured over me, snapping me back to reality. As the waitress apologized frantically, I stood there soaking wet, feeling humiliated. Each party, I seemed to encounter clumsy and rude staff. Despite offering me a towel and warm water, one of the girls begged me teary-eyed, "Irene, finding a job is not easy for me, can you let this go?" I wiped my face, feeling the chill deep in my bones. Before his brothers found me, I turned and ran in the opposite direction, feeling like I'd been drugged. The banquet hall's air conditioning blew cold air through my soaked clothes, unable to dispel the burning sensation in my chest. Perhaps this was Gary's new trick to keep me from leaving. When upset, faltering on my tired legs, I approached a waitress, asking, "Have you seen Gary?" The waiter pointed to a room in the distance where Gary was. I pushed open the door in a panic, collided with a broad, steady chest, and found myself looking into Gary's familiar face. Tears streamed down my face as I said hoarsely, "Gary, I found you. Can we end this game now?" As my whole body trembled, I felt like a lamb struggling to escape from quicksand, embarrassed and humiliated. This was Gary's rule. I had to find him to avoid being played with by his brothers and for the game to end. But this night, Gary seemed different. His eyes were deep and serene, void of the past frivolity. He gently embraced my waist and led me into a quiet room, praising softly, "Good girl, you did well." Gary took me out through a side door, into the hotel's elevator. I didn't say a word as we ascended, and Gary's words were scarce. Standing behind me, the warmth from him seemed to stir a tremble deep within me. It was strange, Gary had never exuded such dominance before, and his body temperature felt higher. When we entered the room, I turned and pressed him against the door, asking, "The antidote, where is it?" Wetting his shirt, I felt his muscles beneath, and as he removed his wristwatch, he supported me as I struggled to hold myself back, saying, "I don't know." The intoxicating scent filled the darkness as desire engulfed my senses. I pushed him away, retreating to the corner, saying pitifully, "Gary, let's break up." Expecting disdain, I was surprised by his gentle response. His hand landed lightly on my head, softly caressing my forehead with his fingertip calluses, his voice low and husky, "It's okay. Let's break up, but tonight, let me help you." Raising my head, I met his cold, silent eyes, different from Gary's usual demeanor. Unfortunately, the overwhelming emotions soon overwhelmed my rationality. I grabbed his tie, leaning up to kiss him. It was perhaps my most audacious act. Crying, I toyed with Gary, who remained silent throughout, allowing me to torment him several times until he finally pushed me on the bed sternly, saying, "Stop, be good." As tears welled up in my eyes again, he wiped them away gently, leaning down with cool kisses, tender and affectionate. Shuddering at his touch, I grabbed his hair, causing him to gasp in pain, as if I were a seductive presence, mischievous and willful. "Be good, don't grip so tightly," he said, his breath hot against my skin. The night was both confusing and absurd. In the morning, I woke from my dream to find myself alone. Burrowing my head in the covers, I couldn't help but recall the night before, realizing Gary had never had a penchant for caretaking, and he seemed like a different person. Dragging my tired body out of bed, I opened the door to find Gary sitting on the couch by the window, engaged in a video conference. The early morning sunlight cast a dazzling golden hue on his side profile, leaving me mesmerized. Hearing the door, he looked over and calmly said, "Awake? Breakfast is on the table." The newfound distance between us left me slightly frozen. "Gary, let's break up." The room fell silent after my words. Suddenly, his computer beeped with discreet coughing sounds. "Boss, we have work, we'll leave first." "I'll send you the meeting agenda later," a voice from his computer speakers announced. I had expected Gary to mock me, but after a moment, he gave a slight smile and agreed, "Okay, after breakfast, I'll accompany you to pack your things." Half an hour later, as I accompanied Gary downstairs, his secretary hesitated. "Boss, there's an important meeting today." Gary's composed tone left me unsettled. Realizing it was time to move out, his patience with me had grown. Eyes brimming with tears, I got into the car, only to have my knee injury flare up. Collapsing onto Gary's lap, I winced in pain. Gary supported my lower back calmly, saying, "Take your time, no rush." His reassuring presence calmed me down. When his secretary handed me my phone, I thanked her, saying, "Thank you." The lingering scent of Gary brought back memories of the previous night's intimacy. Furrowing my brows, I propped myself up and slowly moved toward the room. Suddenly, the phone vibrated incessantly, inundated with messages followed by a call from Gary. Dumbfounded, I subconsciously answered, only to be threatened by Gary in a chilling tone, "Irene, do you want to die?" I was stunned for a moment, looking into Gary's eyes. The morning light was faint, and he lazily leaned back in the car seat. His thin lips didn't move, his posture relaxed, and he raised an eyebrow slightly at me. In the blink of an eye, the same face appeared across the street. Pale like a ghost, he held up his phone, almost hysterically saying, "Irene, get off my brother now." For a few minutes, my mind seemed to explode. My ears were buzzing, and I couldn't hear anything. "You are Gary's brother." Gary never mentioned that he had a twin brother. The other person smiled slightly and said, "Yes, nice to meet you, Irene. I'm Gavin." Remembering how recklessly I had taken advantage of him in bed last night, I was scared to death. I clumsily climbed down from him. Gary crossed the street, forcefully pulling me out of the car, his face tense as he shouted, "Bro, did she cause you trouble last night?" His tone was the same, but there was a hint of immaturity mixed with blatant probing and jealousy. I was close to tears. Gary was already difficult to deal with, and now he had provoked Gavin. I couldn't imagine how the two brothers would torment me. Gavin looked at me, who was at a loss, and smiled gently. "Last night? I'm not sure. This morning, I met your girlfriend in the elevator. But she seemed to have mistaken me for someone else." As I calmed down under his soothing and calm gaze, it seemed like he didn't want to tease me. He asked gently, "Irene, shall I take you home?" Gary dragged me behind him and said, "Bro, you're joking. Irene is my girlfriend, we don't need your help." Gavin smiled knowingly, rolled up the car window, and drove away. As the car's taillights disappeared around the corner, Gary's expression turned cold. "Irene, where did you go last night?" I felt nervous, kept my head down, and dared not look at him. "I didn't go anywhere last night. You're lying." Gary leaned in close to me, smiling mischievously. "Last night, which of my brothers did you sleep with? Tell me, I won't blame you." His words hit a nerve, and I slapped Gary hard. "I'm telling you again. I didn't go anywhere." In an instant, a clear slap mark appeared on his cheek. Gary laughed. "I was just speaking casually. Why are you so agitated? Who else would want you except me? Irene, let's break up." I looked at him and said seriously. The smile faded from Gary's face. Because of Lisa? He took out his phone and called Lisa. When she answered, she asked with a smile, Irene wants to break up with me because of you. What should I do? After saying that, he turned to me, no longer patient and more mocking in his tone. Irene, your face blindness is all because of me, so I won't let you go. Don't mention breaking up again. Feeling fed up, I couldn't hold back anymore and tears flowed uncontrollably. Gary, please stop. I've had enough. Gary, hands in his pockets, didn't listen and said, anything else to say? Just go home quietly. Lisa is crying, waiting for me to console her. I ended up moving out of Gary's place. A few days later, Gary called me and asked if I was playing for real. All right, Irene, don't regret it. The first week I mentioned breaking up, he made headlines 8 times with Lisa. People in the company gossiped about me. When Gary spoiled her, it was genuine, but now that he doesn't like her, they pitied me. They thought I would be heartbroken, but little did they know that I spent the entire week in uncertainty. Because Gavin had returned. His office was not far from my desk. Every day at work, I inevitably met his gentle gaze. Sometimes, even facing Gary directly felt like torture. After a muffled thunder, heavy rain poured down. My boss tossed a black plastic bag to me, with the address written on it. Gary asked you to deliver something there. The location was a 5-star business hotel. Sighing, I picked up the package, knowing this wasn't the first time Gary made things difficult for me. I had no choice but to keep my job. As night fell and the rain poured, I rushed into the hotel, where I saw Gary surrounded by a group of people, speaking about something. I pushed through the crowd and handed him the black plastic bag, wanting to end it quickly. Gary, here's what you asked for. He fumbled, and with a click, the plastic bag rolled a few times, revealing contraceptives. The scene fell silent. All eyes were fixed on my face, stunned. Gary raised an eyebrow slightly, calmly bent down to pick up the items. Sorry, I have something to attend to. Excuse me. He then led me into the lounge in front of everyone. The door clicked shut. The unfamiliar yet familiar scent from him drifted over. He sighed, Irene, you mistook me for the second time. My face turned crimson as I realized it was Gavin in front of me. Seeing the items in his hand made me blush even more. I'm sorry, I was looking for Gary. Gavin smiled helplessly. You confused me with Gary again. It took me 3 whole seconds to realize it was Gavin standing in front of me. He didn't continue speaking. The next moment, Gary's voice could faintly be heard from the next room, sounding displeased. Who told you to call her here? Lisa's cry was heard, seemingly thrown aside by the enraged Gary. The man in front of me became bolder. It made me whimper as he boldly conveyed his words to Gary through the door. His words, showcasing composure and sharpness, hit Gary where it hurt. Irene, why go back to picking up trash when you've experienced something better? Am I not good enough? My face turned as red as a burning cloud. He, who seemed mature and composed, spoke words that were unsettling. Gary almost went crazy, punching the wall. Shut up. Do you want my brother to cut out your tongue? Gavin paid no heed to his brother's breakdown, with a low hoarse chuckle falling into my ears. Well, you can try. This was perhaps the most brazen act of Gavin. If it weren't for a call from his secretary to take him away, I wouldn't know how to handle it. Before leaving, Gavin touched my burning face and advised, Gary is locked in there. Don't rush out, take your time. Listening to the angry knocking from the next room, I sat in the lounge for a while, then slowly got up, straightened my clothes, and went out to eat. The waiter outside was arranged by Gavin. They all wore gold name tags for identification. They led me to a quieter corner. Irene, Gavin said to wait for him for a moment. Tonight he will go home with you. Good. I curled my fingers shyly. The lingering sensation of a subtle hardness seemed to still be on my fingertips. Enthralling. Perhaps I was still immersed in the tenderness from just now, completely unaware of others approaching. Until a glass of red wine splashed on me. It pulled me back from the memories just now. The person hurriedly apologized. Sorry, Irene, I saw your wine glass was empty. I wanted to refill it for you, I didn't do it on purpose. With wet hair plastered to my head, I looked towards her chest. The dark work uniform bare and empty. Nothing at all. I instantly understood, this person is Lisa's best friend, trying the same tricks again. So I grabbed her long hair. Ignoring her screams, I dragged her into the crowd and asked, "Where is Lisa?" "Lisa, pull her away, it hurts." She sought help towards one direction. A hand clutched my wrist. The proud voice of a woman meshed with Lisa's voice in my memory. "Irene, please let go of my friend." I stared seriously at the person's face. The loose features still unable to form clearly. I have searched for her many times, but she always hides behind others to enjoy playing with my emotions. Fortunately, this time she came to me herself. In front of everyone, I kicked her knee. A dull thud sounded as Lisa screamed in pain, falling to the ground. Clutching her knee in agony, her face turned pale, tears streaming down. "Does it hurt?" I remembered the pain in my knee that always acted up on rainy days, and said softly, "I'm in pain too." "You should have thought about this day when your friend tricked me." Lisa bit her lip, only lowering her head and shedding tears. Footsteps approached from behind. Suddenly Gary appeared, grabbing my neck and pressing me against the dining table. Sternly demanding, "Irene, do you know she's an actress? She will be acting in the future. Dare you injure her leg?" I glared at him fiercely. "What about my leg? Have you cared when I was in pain?" Lisa suddenly rushed over, hugging Gary. "Don't blame Irene, it's my fault. That night, I spiked the drink I gave you, and Irene drank it." Gary's face turned angry. "What did you say?" Lisa, startled, anxiously grabbed Gary's sleeve. "I'm sorry, I just love you too much. I didn't mean to harm Irene." At this point, the implication was clear. On the night I disappeared, I was with someone else. Gary scanned his henchman with a gloomy gaze, grabbed my hair, and pulled me closer to himself. "Irene, which one of them is it?" My scalp stung, causing me to furrow my brows. In the struggle, I scratched Gary's face. He wiped off the blood, smiling gently. "Your little lover has great courage, daring to stand up against me?" Thanks to him, Irene was going to play games again. Gary heartlessly threw me into the crowd. My knees hit the ground, and the piercing pain made me break into a cold sweat. He looked down at me from above. "Since you are impure, this time, I won't let my brothers go easy on you." Gary had played this game before. Everyone around retreated without coming to my aid. As I heard the chaotic footsteps behind me, I gritted my teeth, got up from the ground, and searched the crowd for Gavin's figure. But Gary looked too much like Gavin. Every time I tried to grab Gary's sleeve, he pushed me back into the crowd again, saying, "Irene, stop looking for me. I don't want you this time." For the last time, I pushed through the crowd, mustering all my remaining strength to open the door. I bumped into someone, and the familiar scent hit me. My tense nerves suddenly relaxed, and my legs went weak. Gavin instinctively hugged me. Gary, who was watching from behind, chuckled. "Irene, you've made a mistake. That's my brother." Gavin looked down, seeing me disheveled, and the warmth in his eyes disappeared completely, replaced by icy coldness. Gary was still carefree, strolling over and saying, "So annoying, why do you always make mistakes, bro? Want to play together?" Since she can't tell them apart, isn't she used to playing around? Let her get a taste of it. Gavin took off his coat and wrapped it around me. Then, calmly rolled up his sleeves and walked towards Gary. Gary, unknowingly, jokingly taunted, "Where did that wild man from that night go? So tough before, now so scared? Drag him out." Gavin stood in front of Gary, raised his hand gently, and grabbed his hair. In the next instant, Gary let out a scream of agony. Gavin grasped his hair roots, pressing him down to his knees in a slow and deliberate manner. Laughter mixed with a hint of chilling demeanor. "Your man's here. What's the matter? Do you have something to say?" Everyone always said Gavin was gentle and polite, perhaps due to the Goose family prospering. How could he be unreasonable? This was the first time I saw Gavin lose his temper. In the heat of the moment, Gavin's secretary had already led people in to clear the scene. Gavin, as gentle as ever, apologized. "I have some family matters to attend to. Please be kind enough to leave. I need a moment to handle this." After a brief moment of confusion, Gary incredulously raised his head. "Bro, what are you saying?" The bodyguard took over, holding Gary. Gavin let go, took out a handkerchief and wiped it carefully without lifting his eyes. "I comforted her and you're already treating her like this?" Gary's gaze darted back and forth on my face. Suddenly, he understood something. His face went ashen in an instant. So it was you that night. Bro, listen to me. Gary spoke rapidly. She has prosopagnosia, mistaking me for you. Bro, who are you? Willing to be mistaken as someone else by her? My heart clenched tightly, guiltily shifting my gaze away. Gavin tossed the handkerchief. Since Irene can't tell them apart, then I'll mark your face once and for all. After a brief moment of stunned silence, Gary suddenly realized Gavin wasn't joking. He erupted in anger, shouting, Gavin, you need to pay attention to timing. Irene is my girlfriend. Gavin seemed to hear a joke. I've never been one for timing. In business or emotions. Gary was dragged away by people, stunned. Lisa tried to struggle, but Gavin glanced at her. Lisa likes to spike drinks? Lisa shook her head in fear, her shoulders held down. Gavin smiled, call the police. Lisa, congratulations, your acting career has ended. That night, I was still shaken, and my old knee injury flared up, causing a fever. On the way to the hospital, I sat curled up in a corner, not speaking a word to Gavin. Until he carried me into the hospital room, I tried to struggle, but he held my hand down. Gavin's low voice came, Irene, don't be afraid of me. Emotions that had been suppressed for so long suddenly burst forth. My body shook uncontrollably. I was so scared. Not of Gavin or Gary, but terrified that in front of any of them, I was completely defenseless. Like an object being fought over. Even in the years to come, my life would depend on the mercy and pity of others. Gavin didn't say a word and stayed with me until late at night. The secretary knocked on the door. Gavin, it's time to go. Gavin murmured, got up and put on his coat. Before leaving, he called to me again. Irene. I'm not Gary. If one day you want to leave, I won't hold you back. I'll always respect your decisions. As the door gently closed, Gavin left. I buried my head deep in the blanket. Memories of the past flashed through my mind like a movie. The first time I met Gary was at the school festival. Due to my exceptional memory and drawing skills, I excelled in criminal psychology. When the comprehensive results came out, the school had me represent the outstanding graduates on stage for a speech. At that time, Gary was just a university graduate and a playboy. He fell in love with me at first sight and began pursuing me relentlessly. The romance bestowed by a rich man, no girl could resist. But when faced with his confession, I hesitated. I was going abroad for further studies. How could Gary's character accept a long-distance relationship? After talking to Gary, he said he understood, and even said, before you go abroad, let me take you out to dinner? It was on that day that Gary and I had a car accident. Due to our positions, I ended up getting seriously injured and was rushed into the operating room. I had no family or relatives that day. School teachers and classmates hurried over. I saw Gary covered in blood waiting outside the operating room. Listening to the doctor saying I might end up in a vegetative state, he steadfastly said he would marry me. When I woke up, due to brain damage, I developed prosopagnosia. My memory was also not as sharp as before. To receive emails from my professors filled with regret, knowing I could not become a profiler. Irene has prosopagnosia and cannot become a profiler. Is what my bright future in psychology came to an end. From a brilliant psychology student, I turned into Gary's girlfriend. They all said I was lucky, an orphan who, due to a car accident, had soared to new heights like a phoenix. But only I knew what I had lost. Day by day, I languished, my wings broken, my spirits crushed. During the time I was recovering, Gavin seemed to get very busy. His secretary would send flowers every day. Even annoyingly introduced herself, Irene, I'm Gavin's secretary. Until the day before I was discharged from the hospital, the secretary came again. He spoke hesitantly, Irene, Gavin has been asking for you for many days. I stared at him, thinking he would say Gavin was not eating well and had developed a stomach problem from hunger. But instead, he said, Gavin thinks about you every day and wants to know when you'd be willing to see him. He knows that last time he spoke, he seemed like a bully, but that wasn't his intention. I hope you can give him a chance to explain. After the secretary finished speaking, he added quietly, Gavin never does anything illegal. He is a law-abiding citizen. Gavin is like the tapeworm in my stomach. Why should I be afraid when he knows everything about it? I decided to meet him one more time. In the restaurant, I saw Gavin again. There was something different about his appearance today. Slightly more refined. He even looked a bit handsome. As I wondered what was different about him, Gavin smiled slightly and spoke in a gentle tone. I came today to discuss our future plans. I didn't expect Gavin to get straight to the point. He handed me a sliced steak and said softly, "Your studies are not yet complete. Do you want to go back to school?" Even after many years, I couldn't help but feel my eyes welling up. I can't go. Because of prosopagnosia? Yes. Then get it treated. If it can't be cured, then switch to a different field of study. I don't believe you never mentioned it to Gary. I did mention it to Gary. But Gary said to me, "Irene, how many money do you have? Without me, can you afford the high tuition fees? Why not spend more time with me?" Did my being Gary's girlfriend make you feel wronged? I lowered my eyes. Other majors wouldn't waive my tuition. At the poorest age, I lost the pride of my abilities. Finding a job was difficult due to face blindness. Not to mention further education. But I also understood, at this moment, sitting across from Gavin, it was my second chance. I took a deep breath and asked, "Are you offering to send me to study?" Gavin's eyes truly reflected a smile. "Yes, Irene, but let's speak frankly. If I send you to school, there must be something in return." I clenched my hands tightly, fearing I wouldn't be able to bear what he said next. Gavin smiled and said, setting aside emotions, "What I hope to gain is an ally well-versed in psychology." "Irene, I hope it's you." I didn't hear the words I imagined hearing. The server opened the windows. The warm summer breeze lifted my hair. The birds chirped and the scent of flowers was clearer and more real than ever before. For the first time, someone considered me as a person. I flashed a smile that had been absent for a long time. "All right." Gavin's secretary brought the contract. Written in black and white, it detailed the obligations and rights of both parties. Upon my return from my studies, I would work as a psychology consultant to help him manage related businesses. It was like working for him for 3 years for free. Not exactly ruthless terms, but certainly not easy. The secretary said, "Our company's educational assistance program treats everyone equally. If Irene is dissatisfied, she can speak up." I shook my head. It was already good enough. Next to Gavin's powerful name, I signed my own name. After the secretary left, I noticed Gavin was still staring at me. "Do you have something else to say?" Gavin smiled slightly, changing his serious demeanor from earlier. "Now, let's talk about things that can't be reasoned with. Irene, I'm 28 this year, and I've always been chaste. That night was my first time. Do you remember the scene of me tied to the bed being tormented, my face uncontrollably flushed? My eyes darted around, afraid of being overheard by the server. Gavin lightly tapped on the table and continued unabashedly, "Of course, there are so many people in the world who have been taken advantage of, and I'm not the only one. If you don't want me, I won't force you. I just lost my valuable first time and have closed off my heart since then, never daring to love anyone again." I couldn't help it anymore and rushed to his side, covering his mouth tightly. "You're not allowed to say that again. What do you want me to do?" Gavin raised an eyebrow slightly, the implication clear. Feeling like I was burned, I pulled back my hand. I will take responsibility." Gavin laughed. "That is indeed the best outcome." I realized then, with Gavin, money debts were money debts, emotional debts were emotional debts, and they would never be mixed up. But his way of collecting debts seemed a bit ruthless. It wasn't until he pulled me into the car that I realized the logic was a bit strange. Gavin replied, "It's okay, I didn't mean to force you to take responsibility. You can scold me and say I deserve it, it's your freedom. Who made me unloved?" I once again covered his mouth in embarrassment. "I will take responsibility," I said firmly. I didn't expect Gavin to be so swift in his actions. A few days later, the news of Gary's impending marriage was all over the headlines. But there wasn't a single person offering blessings. I sat at my desk, having proofread most of the documents, but gossip about Gary kept pouring into my ears. I'd heard that Mary had a quirk. She had 3 sisters who liked to do things together. What does that mean? It means Gary, being alone, wanted them all. The chatter abruptly stopped, and Gavin appeared at the office door, calling me, "Irene, come in." My mind was still preoccupied with the news of Gary's marriage, not even hearing him lock the door. By the time I snapped out of it, I was already held in Gavin's arms. "Irene, which mentor would you like to choose among these few?" It turned out my emails for mentorship had received replies. Due to my good grades that year, several mentors had expressed their interest in mentoring me. Without hesitation, I chose the mentor I admired. The paperwork would take about half a year to complete. And during this half year, I will be going abroad for treatment. After making my selection, I finally noticed that our position and gestures had become a bit ambiguous. I cleared my throat. "I feel a bit hot." "That's normal." I didn't turn on the air conditioning. Gavin smoothly unzipped the back of my dress. "Irene, time is running out for me. Before you leave, I have to put in enough effort." His gentle kiss landed, "to ensure that after 3 years, you'll still remember me." I have to say, Gavin was indeed putting in a lot of effort. I was helplessly swayed by his words and actions, losing all sense of reason. I could only cling to the table, struggling aimlessly. In a daze, a black card was stuffed into my hand. Gavin's name was signed on the back. I tossed the card back to him, muttering, "No, I don't want it. It looks strange, like being kept." My words were stopped by his sudden onslaught. Gavin's eyes hinted at a storm brewing. "Do you think, Irene," Gavin's voice was so light it could hardly be heard, "that I am keeping you with this card?" "Don't I?" Gavin said nonchalantly. "This card holds all my wealth. I never thought that in your eyes, I could be so extravagant as to keep a girl with all my wealth." I burst into tears. "Are you asking me to marry you?" Gavin laughed suddenly. "Irene, you didn't hear what I said last night, did you?" Seeing my puzzled expression, Gavin laughed again, realizing he had been too audacious, making Irene so happy that she couldn't hear anything. "Then let me say it again. Irene, will you marry me?" All I remember from that day was that after hearing those words, I couldn't control myself and made a mess in Gavin's office. Gavin personally cleaned up while I shrank into the corner of the couch, too embarrassed to face anyone. He was always good at cleaning up after things. I pretended to be dead, not mentioning what had just happened. And so, the proposal ended without a conclusion. When I left the company in the evening, I coincidentally saw a commotion in the neighboring office building. A colleague grabbed me. "Irene, look, it's Lisa, the small star from the internet drama." Following the sound, I saw several burly men holding a person down on the ground. The woman in front lifted her hand and slapped Lisa's face several times. In a condescending tone, she said, "Kneel down and clean this up for me." I noticed the coffee stains on the woman's shoes. Along with her dress, it was a mess. Lisa cried pitifully, apologizing. "I didn't mean to, I just wanted to see Gary." "I didn't say you did it on purpose, I just want you to clean it up." "Just wanted to bully you, is that not allowed?" It dawned on me that Lisa was repeating her old tricks, wanting to use the excuse of spilling coffee to assert dominance over Gary's new bride. But the other woman was Mary. Coming from a respectable family, notorious for her misdeeds, and most importantly, she didn't have prosopagnosia. Lisa was left with a swollen face, pushed into the car in a daze. Colleagues shivered, even Gary was having a hard time. Lisa, a star without a background, fell into Mary's hands. She wouldn't escape unscathed. As Mary got into the car, she caught sight of me. She tilted her head and walked towards me. "Irene, let's talk." The city entered the hot summer. Gavin had been busy, barely taking a moment to rest, and hadn't come for days. The last phone call was just last night. Even his secretary was nowhere to be found. Of course, I had my own things to attend to. Enrollment documents, entrance exams, and more. There were no more social events to attend, and life surprisingly felt fulfilling. One evening, as I went downstairs to throw out the trash, I saw Gavin's car parked on the side of the road. The fatigue of the past few days disappeared. I ran over, knocking on the car window. When the window rolled down, I smiled and asked, "Why didn't you say hi before coming?" Gavin interrupted me for the first time, his usual cool tone somewhat changed. "Irene, let's talk in the car. Put on your seatbelt and listen to me slowly." I was puzzled, still muttering as I fastened my seatbelt. "Why didn't you message me?" "Because I wanted to surprise Irene." My hand stopped in the middle of securing the seatbelt, eyes fixed on Gavin's hand. The surroundings were deserted, the car locked, and we were driving out of the neighborhood. "Irene, seatbelt," he reminded softly. Coming back to my senses, I slowly clicked the seatbelt closed. Under the seat on one side, I quickly edited and sent an alert message. Gavin was never one to play these kinds of games. Only Gary would say such things. The car raced on the ring road at high speed, the landscape becoming increasingly barren. My heart sank. I was feeling tired. "How come?" Gary was startled. "Weren't we just going out? Can you hold on a bit?" Leaning my head gently against the window pane, I couldn't stand it. "You have a villa in the outskirts. How about going there?" Gavin had a villa in the outskirts, uninhabited all year round. That was the only place I knew the address of. Gary glanced at me, his expression visibly colder. "What do you want to do there?" Gritting my teeth, I held his hand. "What do you think? Didn't you say you wanted to watch me dance for you?" With the years of understanding I had of Gary, he had an extreme retaliatory nature. No matter what he wanted to do to me tonight, in his brother's house, using the same means to retaliate, it was something he couldn't refuse. Sure enough, Gary stared coldly at the traffic on the road, a hint of a smile appearing. "Irene's suggestion is good. Making you comfortable is more important than surprising you." He turned on the indicator and exited the ring road. And before my phone died, I sent the location of the villa to the police. The screen flickered and went dark. The last ray of sunlight dipped below the horizon, casting my pale face on the car window. As we entered the villa, Gary embraced me from behind and kissed my neck affectionately. "What dance are you going to do, Irene?" His movements seemed impatient. Ignoring my resistance, he grabbed my neck and pushed me against the table. A mix of scents emanated from him, sickening. I had never felt such disgust for Gary's touch. "Wait, I can't dance like this." Gary snorted. "It doesn't matter, let's get to the point." He seemed agitated, unable to understand reason. I stiffened, biting his forearm. The metallic taste of blood filled the air. Gary suddenly stopped. His voice came quietly from behind my ear. "Irene, you recognize me, don't you?" I abruptly turned around, wanting to escape, but he grabbed my arm and forcefully pressed me against the table. Though it was the exact same face, at that moment, it seemed grotesque and ugly. "You like it when I force you, don't you? I'm doing this to you in my brother's house, you must love it too." I remembered Mary's words to me. Gary was trouble for me. If he escaped from the Yu family, he would pose no threat to me. But I must warn you, I can't guarantee your safety. And Gary's mental state is not very stable. I didn't know how long until the police arrived. I could only find ways to delay the time. "Where did you originally intend to take me?" "Of course, take you back there and lock you up." Gary's lips brushed my cheek, sending shivers down my spine. He became angry, gripping my chin. "Idiot, Gavin and I have been fighting for so many years without a clear winner, and you're eager to change partners. Aren't you scared that one day you'll regret it?" Whatever I liked, Gavin would grab it before me. "Did you think he liked you?" It was just his competitive spirit at play. "You think he will come to save you, dream on." I was pinned down by him, unable to move. Soon, I felt powerless. I could only lie limp on the table, giving up struggling. Gary held my chin, resentfully asking, "Irene, why aren't you crying? Your Gavin doesn't want you anymore." I took a deep breath, my voice hoarse. Each word felt like swallowing a thorn. "Gary, from the beginning, I never intended for Gavin to save me." "What do you mean?" as the police siren sounded outside. I grabbed his wrist and with his shocked gaze, revealed a gap. I had been caged for too long, forgotten how to fight back. I didn't want to go on like this anymore. Suddenly tightening my fingers, I dug my nails deep into his skin, rendering him unable to break free. The sound of the police banging on the door came. Gary's pupils shrank, gritting his teeth. "You dared to call the police?" I smiled faintly. "Gary, you shouldn't have come alone. Did you underestimate me or overestimate yourself?" As the door was forced open, I grabbed the knife that I had been holding onto and slashed it towards Gary's face. At the same time, I tore open my own neckline, firmly holding Gary's hand. In his horrified gaze, I screamed desperately, "Help! He's trying to rape me!" That night, the last thing I said to Mary was, "Mary, do me a favor. In return, I'll help you send Gary in." Gary's face was completely disfigured. As he was put into the police car, he barked at me like a mad dog, "Irene, don't wait for me to come out. I'll be the first to kill you." I sat on the stone pillar in front of the villa, my clothes disheveled, blood still seeping from my neck. "I wouldn't let you out. All those things you did to me before, I will tell the police in detail. With so many witnesses from before, now that you've lost your power in the Gu family, I believe there will be one or two willing to testify, right?" Gary struggled violently. "Irene." The next moment, he was pushed into the police car. The flashing red and blue lights drove off. The surroundings dimmed. Gavin stood on the opposite side. He walked towards me, bending to drape his coat over me and squatting in front of me, disinfecting my wound with a cotton swab. Emotions that had been tense all night suddenly found an outlet. I shivered, bending down slowly to hug Gavin. "How long have you been here?" Gavin was silent for a moment. "I've been here since I received your message." His phone message contained an address and a sentence, "Wait for me." Things happened suddenly, and Gavin and I hadn't spoken. But just those 2 words, despite witnessing the entire process, he still didn't act recklessly. Tonight, I designed the ending for Gary. If he appeared in the villa, it wouldn't achieve the effect I wanted. I closed my eyes, leaning gently on Gavin. Tears began to stream down my face. I was so scared just now. "I know." Gavin patted my back gently. "You did well." Since seeing Mary hit Lisa, like beating a dog, I understood, ultimately, a person cannot rely solely on themselves. Mary owed me a favor. At some point in the future, she might return it in a different way. I leaned into Gavin's embrace. Only then did I notice Gavin's trembling hands. "Gavin, you." Gavin buried his head in my neck. "Irene, don't say anything." On the way back, Gavin held my hand the whole time, never letting go. He seemed tired, falling asleep with his eyes closed. Under the passing streetlights, I finally saw the bruise under his eye. After much hesitation, I texted Gavin's secretary. "Is Gavin busy lately?" The secretary replied, "Yes, there's been a bit of a mess at the company caused by Gary's people. Gavin hasn't had a peaceful night's sleep for several days. This morning, they even called the police, trying to take Gavin away on charges of commercial crime. Luckily, it was cleared up in time. No wonder I couldn't reach him earlier. Gary even stole Gavin's car." I asked again, "Gavin and Gary's relationship, not so good?" The secretary took 3 minutes to reply. "Quite terrible. Gavin was forced to leave the country years ago, and Gary had a hand in it. The undercurrents of their brotherly bond is something no one knows. Irene, Gavin just escaped from the police this morning and saw that text. He's probably been through some shock. I'm busy right now and can't leave. Would you mind looking after him tonight?" Looking at Gavin, who refused to let go of my hand even as he slept, I replied, "Okay." It was my first time stepping into Gavin's home. I had thought it would be a luxurious villa like Gary's. At the very least, a lavish mansion with scenic views. But it turned out to be just a spacious apartment. From the window, you could see the river cutting through the city. Gavin was awake now, pulling out a new pair of slippers for me from the shoe cabinet and saying, "Someone will deliver a change of clothes later, you have to wait with me." Standing under the soft light, he stared at me without blinking. With just one look, he made me blush. I turned my head, avoiding eye contact. Suddenly, my gaze fixed on a portrait hanging on the wall. It was a sketch. I wasn't sensitive to faces, but the small signature in the right corner caught my attention. Irene. This painting. Gavin leaned against the wall nearby. "Yes, you drew it. When you were 15, after witnessing my kidnapping and providing clues to the police, you drew this portrait. The person in the painting is my uncle, who has since passed away. A memory flashed in my mind, not very clear. Many years had passed, and I had never thought much about that small incident. After all, it was just a small favor to me. I have an extraordinary memory and excellent painting skills, so when the police were looking for a witness, I accurately painted a picture. Unfortunately, I can no longer remember faces now." I smiled and said, "I'm glad I could help you." Gavin's body embraced me from behind and asked, "Do you know why I hung the painting here?" One is to remind myself not to trust others easily. The other is to remind me that I will always belong to you. Gavin lifted me onto the dining table, held my hand, and loosened his tie. A life-saving grace in exchange for commitment. "So Irene, you don't have to be polite to me." As the night grew dark, I couldn't see his face clearly. I could only feel the thunderous heartbeat under his palm. My voice hoarse, I asked, "Are you suggesting repaying a debt?" Gavin raised an eyebrow and kissed me. He was particularly assertive that night. He held onto my waist with his hand, not allowing me to escape. It was not until I saw stars bursting in front of my eyes that Gavin let go, laughing and saying, "I'm worth nothing, just repaying with a kiss and helping with my hand." I suddenly covered his mouth. "You! How dare you?" Gavin opened his collar and said, "I don't know what Irene likes, you can take a look. If you don't like it, I'll practice more." Seeing me staring at him intently, Gavin picked me up and headed to the bedroom. He probably thought Irene hadn't seen much of the world, unlike Gary. Still immersed in that moment of enchantment, I was pressed onto the bed. Gavin lifted my chin, forcing me to look at him. "Now, Irene, I want you to feel carefully the difference between me and him." Outside the window, moonlight flowed along the gently moving river, undulating up and down. Occasionally, a few waves would crest, quickly dissolving into the rolling river. After a while, the moon suddenly disappeared into it. It was no longer visible. That night, I was nearly exhausted. In Gavin's casual comparison, I cried out, begging him to spare me. As dawn approached, I held onto his neck, said all the good things I could, and then fell into a drowsy sleep. A few days later, I boarded a plane to a foreign land. At the airport, I passed by Gavin, who had returned from a business trip. But neither of us felt any regret. It was now deep autumn. The maple leaves on the roadside were as red as fire. Walking on the path in a foreign land, I asked, "What were you holding at the airport that day? Was it meant for me?" Gavin replied, "It's nothing special, it will be the same when you come back." 3 fleeting years passed by, and the times I met Gavin were few and far between. Things don't always go as planned. My illness was not curable. So I abandoned the path of becoming a portrait artist and focused on studying criminal psychology. The day before returning home, I received an email from Mary. After reading it, I couldn't sleep all night. The next day, upon returning home, I first went to see Gary. I heard he would be released on parole soon, and when I saw him, he was in great spirits. After 3 years of not seeing each other, Gary smiled and asked, "Irene, are you ready to face my revenge?" Looking at that unfamiliar yet familiar face, I placed my work permit in front of Gary. "Gary, let's talk." 3 hours later, Gary was rearrested for assaulting a police officer. An old case was dug up. The car accident from back then wasn't an accident after all. Gary tampered with his car to injure me, to delay things until after the school term began. But that one crash ruined the rest of my life. The details of what happened, along with the evidence, were all clearly investigated by Mary. Gary had no way to deny it. Out of thin guilt, he once vowed to take responsibility for the rest of my life. However, this promise couldn't last mere 3 years. After coming out of prison, I gathered all the information I had collected and handed it over to my lawyer. Perhaps this time, Gary will never come out again. Feeling uneasy, I turned down my upcoming job and went to Gavin's company. I thought Gavin would be waiting for me alone. But just as I walked to the office door, I overheard him talking to someone else. "Hey, Gavin, a ring has been waiting for 3 years and still hasn't been given out? An unwanted old thing. Were you dumped?" The person taunted without hiding the mockery. Gavin chuckled, "I don't have Harry's luck, rushing to the airport to propose, only to be rejected outright. If I were you, I'd just die." I was stunned, my hand frozen on the door handle. Knowing Gavin as I did, he was always gentle with people. At worst, he would maintain some dignity. To say such words likely meant he had struck a nerve and provoked someone. The other party flew into a rage. If you hadn't snatched the ring from me, would I have failed? Harry, look in the mirror first. Before the situation escalated, I pushed the door open. Gavin. The verbal sparring in the office came to an abrupt halt. A spring-like smile appeared on Gavin's face. Irene, you've returned. Seeing me, Harry's expression turned as dark as charcoal. He slammed the door and left in annoyance. Curiously following his direction, I asked, who is he? Gavin didn't even blink. A thug. I noticed the ring box on the desk and felt a strange leap in my heart. I thought a person as dignified as Gavin would propose at a romantic and quiet location. Little did I know that as soon as I stepped off the elevator, a ring would suddenly be slipped onto my ring finger. Gavin looked ahead indifferently. The entire company's staff was gathered in the lobby, listening to a speech by some vice president, looking drowsy. The vice president, upon seeing Gavin and me, tears welled up in his eyes. He suddenly let out a loud yelp, startling everyone. Gavin, what are you up to? Gavin smiled, holding my hand, dining with my wife. All eyes immediately focused on the ring on my ring finger. Whispers echoed around the room. Oh, Gavin wasn't just imagining things, he really has a wife. I thought he was just making it up to save face. It's not surprising, Harry kept saying he's sick all the time, and I almost believed him. That's when I realized the gift he never gave me at the airport was an engagement ring. Leaving the building, I tugged at his sleeve and whispered anxiously, Hey, Gavin, is proposing like this too hasty? Gavin handed me the ring, which was too large, and gently said, It's a bit hasty, but I don't mind on the roadside. Put it on for me. Confused, I stuttered, Me propose? Can't I? Seeing Gavin's tender and cloyingly sweet eyes, I suddenly remembered his scene in the restaurant years ago where he laid out grandiloquent speeches. A chill ran down my spine. When I wasn't around, what did that Harry say to him? Could Gavin be going insane? With my head down and in a flurry, I hurriedly put the ring on Gary. Will you marry me? An absent-minded phrase that made Gavin chuckle. He leaned down to kiss me. Okay. The next day, Gavin's proposal note became a hot topic online. Following that were the words, Harry proposed 3 times and was rejected. The person who turned him down was Mary. When I learned of this news, Gavin and I were sitting together for an interview. Upon hearing this, he laughed nonchalantly. I don't understand why Harry always bumps into me. It really is, people have different destinies. After all, not everyone is as lucky as me to receive all of their wife's love. The surrounding crowd burst into envy-filled cheers. Glancing around, when Harry entered the room, his face turned as black as coal. Throughout the entire time, I sat red-faced with empty eyes beside Gavin. Due to the thrilling wedding night the previous night, Gavin could always coax me to achieve his goals with gentle words of vulnerability. As we boarded the car, Harry quickly caught up to Gavin outside the car. Impatiently, he asked, How can one be proposed to? With a slight raise of his eyebrow, Gavin glanced over his body, speaking gently, I won't tell you. Finishing his words, Gavin gracefully got into the car, leaving Harry to seethe outside the vehicle. Many years passed, with weddings one after the other. Harry finally persuaded Mary to officially tie the knot. Yet, looking around, the only one still publicly proposed to by his wife was Gavin alone.